Are your wages being garnished? Hey everybody, my name is Hannah with Solo Suit, and if you've been sued for debt and failed to respond, wage garnishment is a pretty common outcome. In this video, I talked to John Skiba, a consumer rights attorney, about wage garnishment. In it, we go over questions like, how much can debt collectors garnish from my wages? Can I be judgment proof in that my wages are protected from wage garnishment? Hopefully this video will give you some answers to your questions about wage garnishment and point you in the right direction to resolving your debt. Thanks for watching.
Do you know how much a creditor or debt collector can take out of your wages?
That's state specific. Here in Arizona, it used to be 25% of each check. In November 2022, they reduced it here down to 10% of each check. And that's 10% of your net, after they take the taxes out. Most states are going to be right around that. The federal government, when they do, sometimes they'll do garnishments for student loans, they're capped at 15%. I don't think I've seen anything over 25%, which was a huge chunk that Arizona used to do. And then a few states don't even have it. Like I know Texas doesn't have wage garnishment, which always surprises me. And I don't believe Florida has it. So you're going to have to look specifically. It's something you could someone could Google, really quickly, what's wage garnishment in Utah or what is it in California? The percentage will be there, but that's based on state law and that'll vary from state to state.
So wage garnishment laws vary by state. We actually have a guide for all 50 states on wage garnishment laws on our Solo Suit blog. But I think you're right. In my experience, and I'm no attorney, but in my experience doing research in this, 25% is like the highest amount usually that can be taken.
Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you found some answers to your questions. And if you feel like you need more help, head over to solosuit.com. We have a blog with lots of resources that can get you more answers to more questions. On top of that, we have products that can help you respond to debt collection lawsuits and settle your debt outside of court. So if the thought of representing yourself in a debt collection lawsuit intimidates you, or if negotiating a settlement seems scary, go over to solosuit.com. We can help you respond to a debt collection lawsuit, settle your debt outside of court, and empower you to represent yourself in resolving your debts for good. Thanks so much for watching and good luck with resolving your debts. Solo Suit is rooting for you.